Hi everyone, welcome to part 4 of the Boronia Bowler handbag video series. This video will cover the final assembly of the bag. You're going to be attaching your completed lining panels and your bag's exterior to the double pull zipper. Now, before we start this part, we just have to prepare a few things. If you're using zipper tape for your double pull zipper, just sew across the teeth and the zipper tape at the bottom at both ends, because there's nothing more frustrating than accidentally pulling off a zipper pull in the middle of assembly. So first of all, start by doing that, and I use some contrasting thread so you can see. Another thing that's really important is to mark your centers. So first, I'm going to mark the center on my exterior, and all you do is you fold it in half, and you're going to mark the exterior, you're going to mark the center on the wrong side at the top, and you're going to do the same on the other end. You don't need to mark the center on the right side for this piece, only on the wrong side. Set that aside. And then for your lining panels, you're also going to mark the center, but this time you're going to mark it on the right side. So you're going to fold them in half vertically, wrong sides together, and then just make a tiny mark at the top center, and then do the same for the second. Now the last thing we're going to do is mark the center on our double pull zipper. I'm just going to fold it in half, and I'm going to mark the center along the top and the bottom edge. So you want the marks on both sides, and you want it on the right side of your zipper. Now, what I'm going to do is, because I don't want to keep having to move my zipper pulls out of the way when I'm attaching my panels to the zipper, I'm actually going to bring both pulls all the way to one end. Now this is why it's important to have the stitching, because I don't want my pulls coming off right now. Then you're going to take one lining panel, and you're going to place your zipper with one edge along the top edge, and you're going to align those center marks that we just made. You're going to do this the entire way. Now, I know some like to notch the zipper tape along the curves. I don't usually do that. I think it's a bit of a personal decision. Some people like to clip the zipper tape and then put some fray check, but I just kind of let it curve up like this, and I will actually notch the zipper tape, but I'm going to do that after I have an exterior and a lining panel attached. I've never had, if you're careful and you don't go too far in, I've never had a good quality zipper tape unravel. I tend to spend quite a bit on my zippers though, because they're a fairly important part of your bag. They get a lot of use, and you don't want to buy cheap zippers. Okay, so we just keep clipping all the way around. Now I know some like to clip the lining and the exterior all at once to the zipper. I prefer to base the zipper to the lining to start, because then you know it's not going to move. Sometimes if you clip all 3 layers together at the beginning, while you're sewing, things start shifting. I prefer to just be safe. So I'm going to take this over to the machine, and I'm going to baste the zipper in place along the entire edge with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance. Now, when we're sewing on the exterior, we're going to use 1/4 inch seam allowance. So in this step, in the basting stitch, I'm only going to use 1/8 because I don't want it to show once I've attached the exterior piece. I don't want any basting stitches to show. Okay, so I've now basted the zipper to my first lining panel. Just so you can see the basting stitches here, because they're contrast. I used a contrasting thread so you could have a look. Now we're going to take our exterior. So this is the assembled exterior from the second video, sorry. And they shouldn't get in the way, but just point your rectangle rings away from the top edge. And you're going to do the same thing. You're going to start by aligning the center marks at the top and clip there. And then you do the same thing, and you just keep clipping along the entire edge. Now, because of the curve here on your zipper, it's going to want to stick out this way. What I just do here is I push it inwards so that the lining kind of curves out this way. And then I keep clipping. Now, before I go too much further down, what I want to make sure is that I clip this part, and I want to make sure that the bottom corner here of my lining lines up with the bottom edge of the corner here. Now my overlay is sticking out a bit, so I am just going to trim it so that I can see a little bit better. So I'm just going to line those up perfectly. Now, the reason why you want to do that is when you're sewing up your corners in the end, if they're uneven, it'll just make it a little bit more annoying to sew up the corners. And then I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to finish clipping the other side exactly the same way. And then I will take it over to my machine, and I'm going to show you how I sew the exterior to the lining and zipper. Okay, so I'm going to now sew the exterior to my zipper and attached lining. Now, if you're wondering why am I not using a zipper foot, and one of the things that I like the most about my machine is if I'm using a handbag zipper, so the zipper tape here is 1 1/4 inches wide. I believe it's a 4.5 zipper. If I use this zipper width, my regular presser foot is actually very narrow, and I don't think you can see in the video, but it actually lines up perfectly with the edge of the zipper teeth on this side of the foot, and I can sew 1/4 inch seam allowance perfectly. So I'm not a huge fan of the zipper foot that comes with my machine, so whenever possible I try to use this size of zipper so that I can use my regular foot. Okay, so here I go, back stitch, and just take my clips out as I go. Now in the corners where it can get a bit annoying, just because as I showed you previously, the zipper is kind of it wants to point upwards. So what I do is I go very slowly, and I just press to make sure that the zipper is nice and flat, and then I sew. There's just certain parts where I feel it's best to just really take your time so that your bag looks nice at the end. So I'm going to finish now sewing along the other side, and I'm going to backstitch at the end. And then for those of you who aren't sure if your machine will handle all the layers, I'm going to show you a couple of areas where you can trim away some of the bulk. Okay, so I have one lining panel and one half of my exterior panel attached to my zipper. Now, I mentioned I was going to show you one place where you can reduce bulk. So I find this area here where you have the top edge of your overlay and the bottom portion of your accordion gusset. This is usually the area where some machines might complain a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to remove some of the basting stitches from when I attached, when I first basted my my zipper to my lining, and just going to clip away a little bit here from where the bottom of the accordion gusset is, and then on the other side I'm just going to trim away a tiny bit where the overlay overlaps with the top exterior. Now, you don't. Some people won't have to do this depending on your machine, but if you're really not sure and you want to be cautious, don't go too close to the zipper. You really just want to remove a little bit where you're going to be top stitching the next step, and do this for both sides. And then you're also going to want to just notch here along the zipper. Don't go too close to your stitching, and if you're worried about your zipper fraying, apply some fray check, and that should solve any issues. Make sure you let it dry properly as well, and yeah, that should probably solve any potential fraying issues with your zipper. So I'm going to go ahead and just notch and reduce some of the bulk. Okay, so I've trimmed away some of the bulk from the problem areas I just mentioned. Now, make sure you're not cutting any of the zipper at this point. You're only cutting from the top layers and the bottom layers that are attached to the zipper. And I've just done a bit of clipping at the top corners. So now I'm going to flip this so it is wrong sides together. Now, this is what you should have at this step. There's your zipper and your lining. Now, we're going to top stitch, but first we're going to press carefully before we do that. So I normally don't show any pressing, but I'm going to show you this because it's a little bit more important that you do this part properly. Okay, so we're now going to press the lining and the exterior away from the zipper. Now, this part here, the gusset, this is one of the most important steps for the functioning of your bag when it comes to opening and closing the zipper. You want to make sure that you are pressing this accordion gusset as far away from the zipper as possible. And you're also going to have to pay special attention to this area when you're top stitching. So really tug it away from the zipper and press. you really want this to stay away from your zipper. Now, if you're using a number 3 zipper instead of a 4.5 or 5, you're really going to have some issues. It's better if you can use a handbag zipper for the opening of your Boronia. Okay, so I'm pretty happy with this. And then you're just going to go around and do the same thing for your exterior. Now, do not press, if you have cork or vinyl, do not press that area. You just want to press the area with fabric. Okay, I'm now going to top stitch. Now, start at one corner. Okay, so when you get to the bottom of your accordion gusset, reach underneath and really pull it away from the zipper when you're top stitching. I keep checking to make sure that it's as far away from the zipper as possible. I find it tends to move as I'm top stitching, so I'm always double checking. Now I'm using a top stitch length of 3.5 on my machine. I'm going to rotate it. And I suppose you could top stitch it with the lining side up so you can have a better look at your accordion gussets, but I really prefer that my top stitching look perfect on the bag's exterior, and I'm less concerned with what it looks like on the lining. So when I get here, you can see the zipper kind of wants to bunch. So I just sort of tug it upwards. Also, one thing I like to do is I like to start with the part of the exterior that I've decided will be the front, because attaching and top stitching the first half of this bag is much easier than the second half. So this way here I know the front of my bag will likely look the nicest. Okay, so I'm getting to my second accordion gusset. I'm just going to reach underneath and tug it. Go back, check it again. Okay, there you go, all done. So now we're just going to attach the other lining to the other side of the zipper. Okay, so we're now going to attach the second lining piece to the other side of our zipper. You're essentially repeating the same steps as previously. It's just slightly more awkward now because you have all of this bulk to deal with. So I start same method. I clip the centers at the top first, and then I'm going to clip here the bottom. So it's a little bit trickier here because you have the zipper that's sort of buckling a little bit. Now it's important here that you have your bottom edge of your lining again lining up with the bottom edge of your overlay. So if there's going to be any if it's not aligned properly, you're going to have trouble sewing up your corners. And again, I'm sort of going to just pull up my lining and ease my zipper into place here. I would have to say that attaching the second side of this bag to the lining and exterior are by far my least favorite parts of making this bag. It just really gets a little bit awkward at this part, but it's you know, it's going to look nice in the end. So you see, I really had to ease my zipper here along the top edge of the lining. You can adjust a little bit if you need to, and there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and finish pinning the other side, and then I'm going to repeat what I did previously, and I'm going to base the zipper to this lining panel with 1/8 seam allowance. Okay, so I've now attached the zipper to the second lining panel. Now, if you haven't done it before, make sure that the zipper for your interior zipper pocket is open completely. Now you see my zipper is looking somewhat angry at the corners here. That's okay. All we're going to do, and I get a lot of questions about this step, is I don't understand what I'm supposed to do next. And it's fairly simple. You're just going to fold the exterior in half, right sides together, and you flip it to the same that edge of the outside edge of your zipper. And it's that simple. Now, this is going to be the most unpleasant part because, like I said, the zipper is a little bit angry from the way that it's been attached, but I just sort of fold it this way and line up my bottom corners and clip those, and then clip everything in between. Use a lot of clips in this part so that nothing moves. I know it takes a lot more time to clip and unclip, but I think you'll be happier with the result if you take the time to add a lot of clips. And then just pull this up. So here, if you curve it out this way, you're going to find it so much easier to clip. So I'm going to clip the rest, and then we're going to sew it exactly how we did the first two pieces. And then you're going to, once again, if you're concerned, you're going to trim away some of the bulk on either side of the zipper where the overlay meets the exterior and where you also have your accordion gusset. And then I'm going to show you how to finish the corners without using the binding finish technique. So I'm going to come back once I have all of this sewn together. Okay, I've sewn the second half of the exterior to the other side of the zipper. At this point, this is what your bag should look like. Now, we are going to need to sew the bottom edges of the lining panels together, but first we need to top stitch the second half of the bag. So at this point, you are going to need to open your bag. You're going to reach in here and open up your zipper. Again, this is where sewing the ends of your zipper closed are pretty important. You're going to open up the zipper all the way, which is not the easiest thing to do. Okay. Reach in here. Okay. And then you just flip your bag like this. And then flip your other half so that your lining and your exterior are wrong side together. And then you do exactly the same as you did for this half of the bag. You press your lining and your exterior away from the zipper. Again, the accordion gusset area is the most important. So I'm going to I'm going to press everything away from the zipper, and then I'm going to top stitch it exactly like I did the first half of the bag. And then we're going to sew up the bottom and finish the corners. Okay, so I have both sides now top stitched and ready to continue. Now we need to sew the bottom edges of our lining, but they need to be right side together. So take your bag now and fold it so that the exteriors are right side together. And then you are going to need to flip each side of your bag so that the top edge of your lining is pointing towards the top. So hopefully you can kind of see what this looks like. It looks like a bit of a mess right now. Your exterior is right sides together. Your lining pieces are also right sides together. And you kind of have to push in the top edge of your exteriors towards the center of the bag. And then you just pin. And since we are turning through the zipper pocket, you can actually sew all along the bottom edge. We're not going to be using an opening at the bottom to turn the bag. So you're just going to go ahead now and you're going to sew all the way along the bottom. Okay, so the bottom edge is sewn together. I'm going to just take my pins out. And now we need to finish the corners of our bag. So we have what looks to be quite a mess here. We're going to start with one corner at a time. So very important here, kind of stick your bag inside, out of the way here of the corner. I have some threads here that I'm going to clip. Okay. Now you need to close one end of your zipper, the end that's at the corner you're going to sew. You need to zip it up. I would say I would zip it up just a bit past the bottom edges of your overlay here, where it meets the exterior. I would just sew it up a little bit past that. Okay. I know it seems a little bit complicated, but it's really not. Now here, remember the center marks that we made earlier? Here's where they come into play. You're going to line up that center mark with the center of your zipper teeth. And I'm just going to go ahead and clip that together right now because I don't want it to move. Right now we're just doing the exterior part, okay, making sure that lines up. Then turn it over and I kind of try to straighten out the rest of the bag. Now obviously your bag is getting pretty wrinkled at this point, but don't worry about that, we're going to press it later. Then you're going to take the bottom corner of your lining and you're going to do the same. So where you've just sewn the bottom layers together, I just open up that seam allowance and then I line up the line of stitching with the center of my zipper teeth. Again, same thing as you did for the exterior. Take off my clip, clip it. I'm going to add a couple of clips here because I really don't want anything to move. Okay, make sure again that this is centered. Feel free to flatten this part if it's being annoying. Okay, so you can see all of your layers are together. This is the view from the lining side, the view from the exterior side, and it's really quite simple. All you're going to do in this step is you're going to sew across I usually sew 2 lines of stitching here because I really want my corners to be nice and strong. Again, make sure that your zipper pulls don't get in the way when you're sewing in this step. So once at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then I tend to sew another one, maybe 1/8 of an inch from that original line of stitching out towards the exterior of the corner, so that I have 2 full lines of stitching at the corner, and it'll make it nice and sturdy. Now I'm just going to reach in, make sure that my zipper is well out of the way, and I'm going to go over to my machine and I'm going to sew this together. Okay, so I've sewn my corner. Hopefully you can see this. There's the first line of stitching at 3/8 of an inch seam allowance, and then another line of stitching maybe 1/8 of an inch away from that original line. And then all you do is you trim away. Make sure you leave both lines of stitching intact. And then here, if you're worried about your zipper fraying or coming apart, feel free. I actually melt it with a lighter, which is probably not the right way, but at least apply some fray check here so that your zipper doesn't come apart. I'm now going to sew my second corner. I've done exactly the same thing. I've reached in, I've closed my zipper part way. Do not close it all the way, or you will not be able to turn your bag right side out in the next step. You have to make sure that the majority of your zipper is still open. You just want to bring it and close it maybe 2.5, 3 inches at most. And then you want to sew the second corner exactly as you did the first. So there's the lining side and there's the exterior side. Okay, so now we have both sides of our, both corners of our bag sewn up. It really sort of looks like a big giant mess right now. Now here's where our zipper pocket comes into play. You're going to reach in through the zipper pocket and you're going to turn your bag right side out. Now don't rush this step. You don't want to tear anything or have anything pop out of place. This is like the hardest part, probably. Well, one of the hardest parts is turning the bag. But we are so close to being finished. I hope you enjoyed the finishing of the corners without using binding. I know binding is not really a favorite sewing technique with a lot of people. I don't really mind it, actually. I think it produces a nice finish. This is really giving me trouble. Okay, so the bag kind of looks like a mess, but we're going to press it, so do not worry about that. Let's just flip it over and have a look. It really needs a press, but you can see that we're nearly there. I'm going to trim a few threads. Okay, so before we continue, we're going to sew the accordion gussets together, and I know we just flipped the bag, but we're actually going to turn it lining side out again, and if it makes it easier, you can close your zipper part way in this step. Stray threads. Okay, so here you're just going to clip the outside angled edges. I'm going to do it this way so you can see. So they are right sides together. So you're going to have the lining side sticking out, facing you. And you're going to go over to your machine and you're going to sew these edges together, and you follow the original line of top stitching that we did previously, and you're probably going to really have to press this down to get it under the foot of your machine. If you find it easier, you could do it this way and start off easy. Start off at the top edge and work to your way to the bottom, and really press your bag down here so that you can sew it all the way to the end. Make sure you backstitch here and here, and then repeat the same thing for the other 2 accordion gussets. Okay, both of our both sets of accordion gussets are sewn together. We're almost done. All we need to do is pull out the bottom of our zipper pocket, and you're going to make sure these are nicely folded, and you're going to sew the bottom of your zipper pocket shut. You can sew it either by machine or by hand, whatever you prefer. Obviously it looks nicer to sew by hand, but I never sew by hand. I'm terrible at it. Okay, so I'm going to go and sew this shut, and then we're going to turn the bag out, give it a press. Okay, I've sewn the bottom of the zipper pocket shut. I'm just going to trim my threads. And then you just stick your zipper pocket lining back inside the bag. You can now zip it up, and then open up your zipper all the way. Turn your bag right side out. So really push out the corners. Okay, now obviously the bag needs a really good pressing. I'm first going to press the interior, the pockets and everything is sort of wrinkly at this point. One of the good things about the Boronia is that it opens so wide that it really makes it very, very easy to press the entire interior of the bag. You can see my gussets are very pretty. And then once I'm done pressing the lining, I'm going to stuff the bag, and I'm going to press the exterior. It's a little bit wrinkled from turning. And then we're just going to finish our handles and our adjustable crossbody strap, which will be in part 5 video. And then our bag will be done. So I'm just going to go and press it, and then we're going to make our handles. Okay, so we now have the exterior mostly done. We're just going to finish up with our handles. I stuffed the bag and I pressed it. It looks quite nice. My zippers are working very nicely. So I'm going to set this aside, and I'm going to grab the cork for my handles. I like really short handles on this bag, so I use the length that is mentioned in the pattern, which is 20 inches by 4 inches. And I start by drawing a line through the center on the wrong side. I'm using cork here again. And do the same for the second. And then I'm going to take my double-sided tape and I place a strip of tape. I don't go all the way to the end because I'm going to be sewing the ends here later, and I don't want my needle to get gummed up. And I have my horrible paper and tape scissors. So I'm just going to show you with one handle, and then you can just repeat the same steps with the second handle yourself. Now, when you're placing the tape, I place it somewhere between 1/8 and 1/4 inch away from the center line. And again, it's because I don't want to sew where the tape is. This tape is actually pretty good at not gumming up the needle, but I don't want to ruin my stitching when I'm sewing my straps. So you remove the tape backing, and if you prefer, you can use fabric glue in this step. If you're using something like Fabri-Tac here, this is quite good. You don't need a lot of glue, just put a tiny bit of glue, just one strip along each side of the center line. Now, I find you don't really need clips at this point. The glue is pretty good at holding everything in place. Fold the other half. Press it into place. And then here's where you're going to need some clips. Just fold it in half again and use your clips to hold it all in place. Okay, so now to sew the handle, you just sew all the way around all the edges with 1/8 of an inch seam allowance from the edges. And I like to use a little bit of a longer stitch length, maybe around 3 or so. And I'm going to use my walking foot because I want nice, even stitching when sewing all of these layers. And then I will sew the second one, and then we're going to attach them to the bag. I've got one of my handles sewn, so I'm just going to pass one end and around my rectangle ring, and I fold it over 1.5 inches, and then I clip it. Now, you can attach your handles whichever way you prefer. Make sure that if you're going to sew them, make sure that your machine can sew 8 layers of cork or vinyl or whatever material you decided to use. I usually use rivets on mine, even though my machine can sew. I just prefer the way that it looks with only rivets. And if you're not comfortable with rivets, you can also use Chicago screws. Just make sure that you follow the installation instruction for those. So I'm just going ahead and I'm going to add rivets to attach the handle. Repeat the same thing to attach the second handle on the other side. And then we're done this part. You just have to complete your crossbody adjustable strap if you want one. Many prefer to just use this as a handbag, which is fine. And that's it. Next part is the adjustable strap.